Imagine you're building an AI assistant for your sales team, but one day it starts accessing confidential data from your HR records. Now, that's not just creepy, but that is a data breach. And we see this time and time again in the news. Sensitive data is exposed thanks to broken access control. So today we're going to fix just that with something powerful: authorization for AI agents. This isn't just a cool demo, but this is a glimpse of how the next generation of AI systems will respect access control by design. Let's jump in. Now, before we can get into what can go wrong, let's talk about what the actual setup is. A RAG pipeline, or retrieval augmented generation, is a way to supercharge large language models with external knowledge. So instead of relying only on what the model was trained on, we can actually store relevant context in a vector database. We can retrieve documents that match a user's query, and we can feed those into an LLM for additional context. And this makes AI agents way more useful because they can answer questions about internal documents, product manuals, support tickets, anything you want. Essentially, you're augmenting an LLM's knowledge base with domain-specific knowledge. But here's the kicker: these agents don't inherently know what they're allowed to access, and more importantly, what they aren't. Now, most retrieval pipelines give AI full access to a vector database. No filtering, no boundaries, no guardrails. And that's fine for a hobby project, but in production, this is a nightmare and something you absolutely want to avoid. We are talking about personally identifiable information, customer contracts, financial reports, all sitting behind a friendly chatbot that wants to give you the answers. So how do you give your AI agent access control like a real user? Well, enter Zanzibar. Zanzibar is Google's planet-scale authorization system. I've spoken about it in a video before, but essentially it powers things like Google Docs, YouTube, Gmail, and it uses something called ReBAC, or relationship-based access control. Think of ReBAC as a giant graph. Users, folders, documents, these are just nodes in the graph. And permissions are computed through edges. So relationships like editor, viewer, or member. So in this case, if you want to check if Kim has reader permissions on some document, just see if there is a path from some document to Kim. Now, ReBAC basically lets you ask the question, does this agent have permission to read this document? And you get the answer in a way that's consistent, fast, and explainable. And most crucially, it scales. Back in 2019, Google released a white paper describing the internals of the Zanzibar system, and the paper mentions that they can do 10 million authorization queries per second, and I'm sure that number has scaled since then. Now, ReBAC and a Zanzibar-like system is perfect for a RAG pipeline. This is because RAG pipelines are complex, they are data-centric, with relationships between documents and users changing frequently. And Zanzibar was designed specifically for this kind of use case, keeping in mind scale and low latency. So how does a RAG pipeline work? Well, typically you embed your documents into vectors and you store them in a database such as Pinecone. At query time, you retrieve the relevant chunks and you send those chunks into an LLM such as OpenAI. One thing to note is that you can actually attach metadata to embeddings to indicate which document it originated from. And we will use this in our authorization checks later on. But here's the problem. By the time you hit retrieval, it's often too late to enforce fine-grained authorization, and maybe the agent has accessed something that it wasn't supposed to. So how do you mitigate this problem? Well, there are two authorization strategies you can choose: a post-filtration method and a pre-filtration method. Both use a Zanzibar-like system for the permission check. Here, we're going to use SpiceDB, an open source version of Zanzibar. And we'll first check out a method called Post-Filtration. In this method, a user makes a query via an AI agent, and that embedded query goes to the vector database, which gives you the relevant embeddings. Once these relevant embeddings are received, there is an authorization check for each of those documents where those embeddings originated from. And data from only the documents that the user is authorized to view is then sent as a query to the LLM. It is a flexible approach that works well when you have a high positive hit rate from your vector database. But if the hit rate is low, this isn't the most efficient method, in which case you would use a pre-filtration approach. Now, with pre-filtering, you first ask, which documents is this AI agent allowed to see? And then you retrieve embeddings only from those documents, which is then fed to your large language model. This method works very well when you have a low positive hit rate. Say you have 1 million documents, but the user is allowed access to only 1,000. You first retrieve embeddings from those 1,000 documents and then make a call to your large language model. So how does this look in real life? Well, let me show you a quick demo. The entire demo can be accessed on this Jupyter Notebook link that you see in the description below. But here's a quick peek of how it would work. There are two agents in this demo, a sales agent that can access two documents and an HR agent that can access just the one document. And there are relationships defined between these agents and documents. I have SpiceDB running locally against which I'm going to make my authorization checks. We essentially embed these documents with OpenAI, store them in Pinecone, and give each document a doc ID in the metadata. And then we ask, what documents can this AI agent read? And we can only summarize those. Look at this summary. It only includes information from document 1 and document 2 because those are the documents the sales agent has access to. No leaks, no hallucinations. And this is what secure agentic AI looks like. I don't need to tell you this, but AI agents are here to stay and AI is becoming more powerful every day. But with that power comes access. If we don't build access control into our agents, they'll start accessing things that they shouldn't be. And Zanzibar-style authorization gives you a clean, scalable way to fix that. And SpiceDB makes it real. Try the demo for yourself. The link is in the description below, and subscribe to our channel for more content on authorization. See you in the next one.